Hello, in this video I'll show you how you can use ACRO, how to write some of the ACRO commands and what are the outputs of these commands. ACRO is a statistical disclosure tool that is built on two of the most famous Python libraries, pandas and stats models. If you know how to use these two, then you know how to use ACRO. ACRO uses the same commands of pandas and stat models, but with the word ACRO added to the beginning of the command. There are various support and documentation on pandas and stat models in different websites. For example, Kaggle, Real Python, and W3 School. Let's now talk about why should you use ACRO. Researchers spend a lot of time working on sensitive data to come up with interesting findings. But what stands against releasing those findings is the output checking process. The researchers' findings need to be checked for any potential breach of data confidentiality. Checking the outputs manually is a time-consuming and complex process and prone to human errors. And here comes ACRO. ACRO produces the same results produced by the standard packages like pandas, as well as feedback on the results of the disclosure checks. This will allow you as a researcher to see what the output checkers will see and make changes accordingly. If you would like to practice and test ACRO in your own environment, then you can install it from PyPy using this command, pip install ACRO. If you are inside a TRE, this step will be done for you. After the installation, you can load the ACRO package normally as you do with other packages using the command import ACRO. Before using any of the ACRO functions, you need to create an ACRO session using this command. Note that the TRE risk appetite is displayed on the screen in the pink color. You should choose whether you want to suppress the output results or not. Suppressing the output will cause all the cells that violate one or more of the disclosure tests to be suppressed. After you are done preparing the environment, now it's time to prepare the data. You can pre-process the data the way you want. There is no restrictions on the processes you can apply to the data to make it more feasible for the analysis. For this presentation, we use the nursery open source dataset from OpenML. We renamed some of the columns and changed the column children from category to numerical. Now let's create some outputs. If you would like to perform a cross-tabulation using pandas, you can use the command bd.crosstab and gives it the index and columns. The output of the command is a table showing the cross-tabulation between two columns from the dataset, recommend and parents columns. Now I'll show you an example of producing the same table using ACRO. In ACRO, it's the same command, crosstab. You just need to add the word ACRO in front of the command. The output of this command is in the pink color, is the feedback from the statistical disclosure check. You can see a summary which shows whether the output passed or failed the disclosure test. Here the output failed the threshold rule and 4 cells may need suppressing. These cells are very clear in the outcome data frame, where these are labels with the word threshold. Finally, the actual result of the cross-tabulation is shown at the end of the output. You can see that this table is similar to the table produced by pandas crosstab. If you would like to perform a more complex cross-tabulation using ACRO, you can use the following command. In this example, we use the column recommend and parents and we aggregate them by the mean of the column children. The feedback of the statistical disclosure check is shown in pink and the output table is at the end of the output. ACRO is not only used to produce tables, but can be used in regression. Here is an example of using ACRO to produce a linear regression. The output of this command are, as we should expect, the feedback from the disclosure checks in the pink color showing that the output passed the check of the degree of freedom, and then the actual output is shown in black. After you are done and happy with the outputs, a call to the finalize function should be made to finish the research. To call finalize, you should pass the directory name and the format of the output, which could be either JSON or Excel. The default is JSON. By calling this function, you don't need to manually organize your results in a folder, as this function writes the outputs and the summary of the disclosure checks to a folder that contains everything the output checkers need to make the decision. There are other functions that allow you to communicate with the output checkers by adding comments or a text description that provides some context to the outputs, or by sending an exception request if the output is disclosive but you think you have reasoning for that. For example, you may want to ask for exception if you think that some zeros are structural and are not actually disclosive. You can also delete the outputs that are disclosive or you don't wish to include them in the research anymore. You can rename the outputs to a more descriptive name. You can also add outputs that are not supported by ACRO to the ACRO object. If you forget to do so, these outputs will be added to the outputs folder automatically upon calling finalize. And you can, of course, bring the outputs to the screen. For more information about ACRO, go to these links where you can find notebook examples, documentations, and a wiki page. Thank you.